Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Andrew Whipple, a developer for Daily Magic Games, a publisher of many games that fall under the Valeria universe. Their latest title, Castellans of Valeria, is currently on Kickstarter. Andrew, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
I'm doing great, James. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to have you on here. So, Andrew, maybe you can give us just a quick overview of kind of who is like Daily Magic Games as a whole. Maybe you can just kind of give us a quick overview of that for people who don't know.
Yeah, Daily Magic Games officially started 2009. David Mackenzie is the founder. There's a whole rich history there, but super small games publisher. We've been making, as you said, the Valeria universe of games. That has been the bread and butter of what this company is. However, we have certainly published other smaller games. So we're looking around, kind of like you, actually. Look around to see kind of what's out there. Try to give people a shot in the dark sometimes. But that's who we are.
That's cool. Now, I mean, and I don't want to underplay this. You guys are running something like, is it 25 or 20, 23 or 25 Kickstarters alone?
Yeah, that's right.
And then have you done any direct, has there been any direct to retailers in between any of those, or has it just been those kind of like 25?
Not really much that's direct to retail, some of which, but most of the things that we require, just because we're so small, do require the crowdfunding boost to be able to get that stuff over the hump.
Sure.
Stuff like Quests of Valeria originally had started in the Villages of Valeria campaign. That was the second Kickstarter we ever did. Also, coincidentally, talking about it now, was our most funded. I believe it was about $214,000 for that one.
Congrats.
And we're talking like way back too, where a base pledge was, I think it was like $14. So very different times.
The good old days, they call those.
Yeah.
And then how did you start this company? Have you been with, like, when did you come in?
So I've known David. I've known David Mackenzie since 2019. So I didn't come in until later in the company's life. Technically, what I said is a little bit of a lie, because Clever Mojo Games was the one that got started in 2009.
Okay.
And then eventually it evolved. That company ended up getting sold to Game Salute. And then Daily Magic Games was founded shortly thereafter. I believe that was 2012. As long as I'm not misconstruing my dates.
Now,
I've known David.
What? No, but was he like kind of from the beginning and kind of moved with a different ownership, or did he kind of acquire and then kind of take it from there?
Yeah, so David's not really the kind of man that likes to talk about himself, which is why I'm here talking about most of this stuff now.
Of course.
And he deserves a lot of credit. A little do many people know this is something, a little passion of mine, is that not enough history is kept about the board games industry. And what I mean is, did you know that David Mackenzie is the very first person who spawned a successful Kickstarter for board games?
I did not know that.
I'm not kidding. Surely there was probably something beforehand out there, some smaller stuff that's out there, but just on a bigger level. He kickstarted Alien Frontiers, the very first edition of the game that ever existed. You can look on Kickstarter. It is there as historical evidence.
Yeah.
I believe it only made $14,000, something like that. But at the time, once again, astronomical, more than they could have ever hoped to gain.
Yeah.
Just insane how some of that stuff works out. But that's where like some of the history is with this guy.
And has there ever been like a thought that, if you look at like Stonemaier Games, for example, right? With Jamie in his group, you know, as they had kind of continued to grow, eventually they got to the point where they said, our audience is so big, right, that we keep pulling over with us, that, you know, we can probably do our own kind of pre-order through our own website and kind of take that audience that way. Was there ever been that kind of discussion with your team as well, to say, you know, we keep bringing these kind of, you know, as backers from campaign to campaign who are familiar with us, maybe we get to a point where we do it direct and don't do the Kickstarter, but almost do our own pre-orders to our website, things like that.
This could be a podcast all by itself.
It could.
Seriously, it's.
Yeah.
I think that question a lot of people ask, and I see this in discussions all the time. Why don't companies like you go direct to retail? And the answer is sometimes you just don't have that choice.
Not direct to
It
retail,
is,
direct to consumer though. Because
I'm sorry,
direct to consumer, right?
direct to consumer, like as well. Like it's sort of the same conversation.
Yeah.
That you have to have not only warehousing, but you have to have the right connections to be able to make those orders really come to fruition.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the ability to be able to, first of all, have anybody can get a website, but we're talking like real-time orders. If somebody places an order nowadays, you would expect that order to be shipped out to you within that week. And if I'm being honest, you should probably be getting that package within 2 to 5 business days.
Yeah.
And that's just being generous. But that isn't really an option. That hasn't been. Distribution is a complex problem, and it's not always a problem for somebody. Like Jamie has gone on record and just said that a lot of the stuff he attributes to luck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and that happens. Like that can happen. Like you can have an amazing hit, like something like a big game, like an Oathsworn.
Yeah.
Right, something like that.
Wingspan is a good example of that, right?
Wingspan is a great example as well.
Unforecasted, the forecast on that was way lower than they could have even possibly imagined. Then they're scrambling to catch up, right?
Absolutely, and that happens too. Matter of fact, that happened to us.
Yeah.
When Shut Up and Sit Down did a random review of Songbirds. Matter of fact, it's right here. Even though I'm not sure if this is an audio or video podcast, but here it is. Right, this thing is just it's a real small game.
Yeah.
Just overall, really nice and light. We weren't able to make any copies of it for a long time. So when that video came up, we had no idea. So of course, that generated some buzz. People wanted to get the game, but you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't go to Amazon, Miniature Market, Game Nerds, Card House, like any place. Board Game Bliss in Canada. Mm-hmm. We don't have it. Like there's nothing that we could do about it. So of course we go, well, how long is it going to take for us to be able to make this print run and then get it over here? Because by then the buzz could just die down. And we took the chance anyway.
That's a challenge, right? So it's like, okay, we've got this massive demand. We can't fill it, but we have to run the math. If it's going to take us 6-8 months to get copies, people might be on to the next game by that point. Now we're sitting on a bunch of stuff that we just rushed to make, right?
Absolutely. Yes. That is certainly what it is. But really, to answer your question plainly, is that we've talked about trying to be able to get those lines more direct to retail than to consumer, just because we can't handle the direct to consumer, like just the storage space, all of that. It's not possible.
Yeah.
It just isn't. But even direct to retail, you need to, if your listeners are unaware of how this works, a distributor, a network, someone orders a ton of your games, just a lot of it, and they're going to sit in a warehouse until orders come in. So if a big place like Cool Stuff Inc., back in the day, especially if they have more pull and they want to order a bunch of your games, great. Like that's going to come through for you. And then maybe Alliance or whoever else is going to order more of that stuff. But if you don't get those orders in, if it's just a ma and pa, just FLGS, then they might not send anything. It just might not happen. So that has been a thing that has happened to us, where there's a lot of games that are just kind of sitting around.
Yeah.
But that's where it is. And we just don't want that to continue to happen. You're sitting on a lot of lost cargo and therefore money.
Not only that is there's this urgency around liquidating, right, to free up that cash flow, because that's cash flow that's tied up for you or even someone you've sold to. If you got distributors bought it and they've got skids sitting in their warehouse and it's not moving, they're going to liquidate it, right? They're not going to
fire sale.
Sale, right, and get the cash back. And now you've got your game out there. in bargain bins.
Yeah. Well, and you would think that's also a double-edged sword here because you think, well, if it wasn't going to sell anyway, it sucks because we're technically taking a loss or just gaining pretty much nothing from it. But we're gaining possible buzz. Maybe a couple of people pick this thing up and bring it to their game nights,
Yeah.
and then maybe donate it to a game library and people are checking it out. And now at least there's more eyes on it. So there is some positivity to grab from something like that.
Yeah. And then, so what was your background before you joined these guys? So this is more recent for you joining them. Were you with another game company? Were you on your own? What was your kind of background?
Yeah, just a little history about me. So I was a long time ago, I was a freelance video games journalist. I had been doing that stuff
Nice
since
stuff.
school and really wanted to get into it hardcore. But that's another one of those huge things where it even persists today, where it's very difficult to make a living off of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
especially if you have a family. So I had really built myself up. I would just do every waking moment. I would write and write and write, write, write. And just, I was good at interviews. I would be sent to conventions, eventually getting invited to things that don't exist anymore, like the Electronic Entertainment Expo, which it is just the first year where they haven't had it. But that was the biggest convention for electronics in the world, one of them. And other conventions too, like PAX, things like that. But chatting with people, being able to get that news in there, that was a big deal. But eventually, I got sick of just living off of macaroni and cheese and things like that. I wanted time back. You got a family too, so
Yeah.
that's a really big deal. But it was my choice, right? Like I had a lot of positive experiences from it, lots of connections. I know how the industry works in many ways. Eventually moved on from that. I was a frequenter of cons anyway, so I just so happened to go to Gen Con one year. I'm like, yeah, let's just go. Man, this tabletop thing is crazy. Let's just get in there.
Yeah.
And I had met David and Isaiah at the time, the designer of Valeria Card Kingdoms, our flagship title. And they wanted me to, it was one of those things where it's like, hey, you like these games? Do you wanna like hang out at our booth and we'll give you some stuff and that'll be fine. Uh, I was like, yeah, you know what? I got nothing else going on. Like, let's just do it. So Thieves Den was their game that year. And I remember distinctly, this is so stupid, but it's kind of funny. They had about 250 copies of Thieves Den.
Hmm.
That game is out of print. You cannot buy it right now, which is unfortunate. But I do think this is a little bias in me, but I think that it is an excellent gateway game in so many ways. Uh, but I told them 250 games, huh? We're gonna sell them all. And they said, I really hope so. Like that would be awesome. And don't you know, if he was here right now, he would confirm we did sell all of those games, and that was a my purpose that Gen Con.
And then what was how did you like, you know, I was talking to people, I was just recently at Origins, right? And did you have a method for moving the volume? Like what's your con kind of tip you would give people to get that kind of engagement?
So I'm a candid person, and I'm pretty emotional with just the way that I speak, and I just try to be matter of fact about those things. I try to sense what kind of people, especially ones that don't really elicit too many emotions, like what they like, what their style is. But I just give them the crash course. Just go, hey, come on in. I'm just trying to be friendly.
Yeah.
Just saying, do you want to play these games? Like, come on over. Just sit down. Even if you just play one round, let me give it to you straight. Like, this is the game. This is how it's set up right now. Let's just do a round. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
And it really worked. There was a lot of people that just came by and said, you know what, this is a perfect game that I think could not exactly be filler, but I could introduce to anybody. And this is just fun. It's like a mixture of Splendor and Lords of Waterdeep and love the artwork. Sure, great. And that was me. That was me that con.
I come from the vitamins industry, and I've been a lot of conferences and conventions and show halls in that industry.
Mm.
And the rule of thumb was always, if you're not currently talking to somebody, you're not allowed to let people walk by the booth. Right? So you would
Yeah,
literally,
yeah.
go, and of course, sometimes you'd have whoever's running the con come by and say, hey, like, you guys got to stay in your booth. But we would literally step into the aisle in front of people and just say, hey, how you doing? Like, I give you an example. We just we're showcasing Catnip Auction House, right, at Origins on the Friday. And you'd be amazed at how many people they've got blind, because it's not that they're trying to avoid you. They're just walking, right? They've got blinders on and looking like, 100 feet ahead, and they may not even notice that you're there. So something as simple as saying, do you like cats?
Yeah.
Someone's like, what?
Yes.
Huh? And they turn and they're like, yeah, I was wondering, are you a cat person or a dog person? Most people are going to say they're cat people, of course. Or if they're not, then you can enter in some kind of discussion as to why they're not cat people. But then it's a lead into, well, we've got this game we just launched today, right? And so for me, what I do anytime I'm at a convention is I try to think, what is going to be the hook for this convention to pull people into the booth? Not necessarily if they don't want to, like, if they don't want, they can keep walking. But what is the one thing I can do to grab someone's attention to at least get them to look at me, so I can see if there's a possibility for us to have a conversation, right? You'd be surprised.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
It's eye contact. Like, if you just are friendly to people, I find that no matter what, like, that's the hook itself. Like, they want someone that's passionate about the game,
Yeah.
and that want to do the best that they can for you, just sitting there, like, at the table. Like, don't be awkward. Just be friendly. Just say, like, hey, it's fine. If you made a mistake, let's just go back. Let's just do this. We'll change it. Not a big deal. We just want you to test the game out. We're not going through the whole thing. I'm not going to record it, I promise. And then pretend like you're taking a picture.
Yeah.
No, it can be a lot of fun, and I think that's why cons, especially for people like yourself, being able to showcase a game that someone didn't even know about at all is huge.
Yeah.
And they're looking at you. You're selling the game. It's not just the game, it's you. They want to support yourself.
Yeah, and that's my advice usually to people who are doing Kickstarters, and they're saying, what's your advice you can give? And my advice is always make it as personal as possible. All right, because you are the product. Yes, the game, but there's thousands of games out there, right? On a weekly basis. What is it that cuts through the clutter? Many times is people just want to support you, right? And if they feel like they've been part of especially if they feel like they've been part of the process, right? If you can say, hey, here's some stuff I'm working on. It's not final. What do you think? And they can give their thoughts and their opinions. Then there's a bit of ownership that they feel as part of that game, and they want to see it be successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. As a developer, so you came from this video game industry where you're doing interviews, right? You're doing the whole media circuit. The development side is obviously much different than that, right? So the development side, you're dealing with manufacturing. You're trying to figure out, okay, how can I actually take this guy's idea and take his prototype, which he thinks is going to go like that. And I can tell you that from a cost perspective, we're going to be trimming some stuff, and we're going to make some changes to make this work from an economical standpoint. Was this something that you've, like, from your past, you've had some other experience that led into that, or is this something you kind of learned on the job, or kind of how did that kind of flush out for you?
So it's an interesting deal when you are trying to put two industries like that together, like the video game industry and the board game industry. But it's funny because I think that they actually have a ton of similarities. The board game industry is not even like a percent as profitable as video games. Like, I believe right now they are the number one source of revenue for the entertainment industry. They surpassed movies, TV. Like, just, it's ridiculous the amount of money that it generates.
Yeah.
But you're right, the development process is different. When you are a video game developer, that is, of course, a completely different thing. However, there's a couple of things that are different that made me sort of just get inserted into this role more naturally. And that is, it's kind of old school. Like, when you had a Nintendo, there were no patches. There was no downloadable content. There was nothing like that at all. Those games needed to be ready to go on day one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with the board game industry. It works in the same way. You need to look at something, try to hit it in as many different angles as possible. I'm talking with play testing, people that you put it in front of. What kind of game is this? Who's it for? How many players can it handle? The bugs, like the ins and outs of really just trying to understand that. Do you need this rule book to be 32 pages? Do you need it to be one page? front and back,
Yeah.
like your Century Spice Roads and Golem editions. But sometimes you need a little bit of inflection when it comes to like pictures and whatever else.
Sure.
But for me, yeah, I was able to fortunately just understand what my role was
Mm.
as a developer. And something else I think that it's important for people to understand is that designing and developing are very different.
Yeah.
In the board game industry, for whatever reason, we associate most of the success because of the designer that's on it. But the fact of the matter is that there's a team behind every single game that's out there.
Yeah.
Even on Board Game Geek, you will see the name, the designer that's there. But sometimes that designer sells the skeleton to the crew, and they might even be part of the same company. People don't know. Most of the work can actually come after the design process has already happened.
Oh, very much so. I mean,
Yeah.
of the few licenses that we've signed, we do our own design, obviously, but of other people's games that we designed, if you're doing a reskin, I mean, that's a lot of work, right? And often that game, when it's going to market, is very different. The core essence is the same as what the designer had come up with, but in many cases, especially if you're making it as part of a property, right?
Mm,
So where you have a universe you guys have fleshed out, okay, you find a game, you're like, okay, that game will fit into our universe, but we have to make it fit into our universe, right? So it takes a lot of
totally.
work, right?
Yeah. Reimplementations can be tricky business.
Yeah.
Like there's of course really famous ones that are out there too, like your Battlestar Galactica's into Unfathomable. Like that's Unfathomable is Battlestar Galactica, but made in the vein of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of stuff that's out there, and it's great that it exists like that. It just gives people maybe themes that they resonate with more, and it gives you a reason to maybe tweak some mechanics out there.
Yeah.
And I find that delightful.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful thing.
So on that note, Castellans of Valeria, can you first of all just explain the Valeria world to our listeners, if you don't mind? And then I want to get into the game, and maybe you can give us kind of a preview of what this game's about and what people can expect when they back this campaign.
Yeah, of course. I think this is the number one question that we get is the Valeria universe, like the world. Like, what is it? Do I need to play the first game in order to play the other ones? Like, where do I start? Like, what's the deal here? Well, starting with Castellans of Valeria, we are now putting a little sticker on things. We're going to be dropping the of Valeria moniker because it creates that kind of confusion. So, as you said, this is a world, and Valeria is a medieval fantasy style world. And every game that takes place in this world is linked by the iconography and the artwork. And of course, the environment that exists. But all the games are different. They're all for different levels. There has been nothing that is linked from one to the other besides those things that I've already said.
The story.
Valeria Card Kingdoms is a tableau builder and more of a gateway game that can get more advanced with some other modules you attach to it. But it is very different than a Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, which is a dice drafting, personal, like asymmetrical power game. And that's where like some of that confusion comes in. As far as our game Castellans of Valeria right now, just as we were labeling Castellans, and you can say Castellans as well.
I'm
like
Canadian.
Some people
I have
have wondered
accent.
about that. I love it. I love that. This is the company's first area control game.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of area control. I think that is one of the most engaging kinds of genres that you can bring to the table. You're always interacting with people. It's not a solo multiplayer game. You are paying attention to other people's turns because what they do can change everything that you've done. But it's not to say that you flip a card over and now you have to reassess your entire turn and you've got analysis paralysis. No, this is a game that also sports asymmetrical powers. Everyone starts off with our beautiful dual layered player boards and the same footing, no matter what. You start the game off the same way. What you build and what you do is going to slowly develop and indicate what you could be doing, which is possibly helpful information for your opponents to know, but you could also be throwing them off. But you're always engaging the board. Everything that you do in this game constantly says that. And if you're following any of the updates that I put out, which I did one just before this podcast started, I'm always talking about engaging the board. Engage the board. That's what you have to do. And we're really excited about this one.
I find the components are quite I like this term, and I'm just showing the page for people to do actually watch the video playback versus the audio playback. The components look super high quality, printed meeples, and I mean,
Thank you.
and you've got a lot of like really high end reviewers that are looking at this and previewers. So congrats on that as well. I
Thank
know
you.
that,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
to get, I mean, a lot of these reviewers and previewers are very, very busy. So to get the ones you've got on here, because I know I've reached out to these ones, many of these in the past for some of my games. I mean, they've got a very, very long lead time, right? So kudos to you for getting the ones you got. This idea of pre-stretch, can you talk about that? That's first I've seen that
Yep.
term. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that term's been thrown around for a little while now. We talked about this too. Is that do you play the game that everybody knows where you want people to keep coming back every day and making a bazillion comments because you want to see what's possible to unlock on the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that stuff's already unlocked. It
Yeah,
just is. They're trying to make it a little bit more exciting for people. So when we talked about it, is that most of, if not all, of our line of games have there's a certain premium quality to them, and that's only increased over time, especially as David has become more and more aware of
yeah,
what people want in the game. So pre-stretched essentially is just letting you know, look, we actually need your support with this crowdfunding campaign. Like that's how we are going to be able to get these games to you directly.
yeah,
So how do we reward you that way? One, we're giving you the best price that we can do, not MSRP, and then we're going to just do everything out of the box. Nothing's Kickstarter exclusive. But if we can make this stuff happen, then you deserve to have a game trays insert, screen printed meeples, artwork from the Me Show. All of that stuff we want to continue to have put through. And you don't have to sit there for this game where you already know they already unlocked all this stuff. What's going to be today?
yeah.
That's it. So that's how we've approached it. We just want people we don't want to waste their time,
Mm-hmm.
but we want them to be able to, as you had said earlier in this conversation, support us for what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, the game trays, and I'm hovering on that image too. They look super cool.
Sleek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. They do.
Did you see there's a difference between the prototypes that we've put out there? If anybody's watching, like the reviews, previews, playthroughs, any of that stuff, those meeples were our like tier one, and they've been upgraded. We show what they look like on the page now. The
Yeah.
Misha was able to put all of his artwork on it, and it's amazing.
Oh yeah, the meeple. It's cool, and you're seeing more of this now in the industry. I think is these, pre-printed meeples, and not just like one color, but now you're seeing in some cases multiple colors, and the way you've got your buildings and stuff like that set up. I mean, it looks super cool, and I want to congratulate you guys on that. Even your funding, I want to congratulate you on your funding. You guys are 5 times your goal. Was still 4 days ago. You've got that back end hockey stick that we know always happens in the last 72 hours.
Yes.
So I'm sure you guys are going to be pretty excited where you land. What comes after this campaign? So is there more kind of Valeria stories and games coming, or is there going to be something else, or what do you guys have planned?
Well, so if you've not followed the campaign so far, this is the first one where we've announced that we're not making as much as we were hoping to
Yeah.
be able to distribute across different countries for our games. So we're more of a boutique style publisher right now, and that just means that the only way we can get the games to you is through just direct shipping from Kickstarter. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And we're hoping to be able to generate a more interest that we can in the future be able to make more reprints and possibly better distribution methods happen. As far as like other games go in the future, we have been right now we're working on a unnamed title. It's I can't say too much about it, at least right now, but that's coming up. And
Yeah.
our original titles, so Quests and Villages of Valeria, we are looking to do funny we were talking about it, kind of a re-implementation or a redux version with
Yeah.
some improved rules so they don't lose their identities.
Well, I'm sure David's learned a lot since 2009, right? And it's
Oh
cool
yeah.
to see like an evolution, right, across and just a sheer number of campaigns you guys have done, and you learn something every time you do a new campaign to improve it, and the industry's changing at the same time, so you're having to constantly, adjust and adapt. But kind of looking back where it first began and saying, we've learned a lot since then, right? Since we did that title, maybe there's another life for those original titles that we did, employing now almost like doing a restorations game on our own games kind of a thing, right? To come at it with another approach would be kind of cool. So I'm excited to see that with you guys.
Yeah, thank you. You see that in second edition sometimes now
Yeah.
and like reimplementations. So that's the way we're looking at it right now as well. Before we're going to have new titles, of course we are. But yeah, that's just something that hopefully we can look forward to in the future here.
Yeah. Well, for people that want to follow this campaign, you can go to Kickstarter and type in Castellans. So I'm going to spell that so people can find it. Castellans. And you'll find this campaign. I'm also going to put a link in the show notes if people want to find it quickly. Check it out. It looks super cool. And Andrew, I want to wish you guys all the best in this coming year on this campaign and as rollout in the next year.
Oh, we appreciate it. Thanks, James. Really, really appreciate it.
Take care. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.